Welcome back to the Career Conversations podcast, or if this is your first time, welcome. Thanks for listening. My name is Alex Pepper, and I'm brought to you by the Career and Professional Development Center at California University of Pennsylvania. If you want to check out our services, follow us at CalU Careers on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, or visit our website at www.calu.edu/careers. Today I'm speaking to Christopher Buffington, who currently works as a global merchandising director at Salvatore Ferragamo. Yep, that's Salvatore Ferragamo. I truly loved this conversation. I mean, seriously, I had a blast talking to Christopher. We had a discussion about, what it means to pursue your passion with a relentless drive, even through the face of rejection. As you'll hear, we touch on so many things like the art of war and the usual suspects, or Mike Tomlin and Jay-Z. Honestly, I loved it, so I hope you love this career conversation. So I'll start off by letting you introduce yourself, talk about what you do, and kind of give me a layman's terms. You can talk to me like I'm stupid and explain to me what you do for a living.
Sure. So my name's Chris Buffington. I am a 2007 graduate, California University of Pennsylvania. I live in Italy currently. I work in fashion. I oversee all the men's leather goods merchandising for Salvatore Ferragamo at a global level. So I kind of interact with everybody from the States to the East and the central parts of the world. So in layman's terms, it's my job to put the right product at the right price, at the right time, in the right location. So easy stuff. But I sit between almost a balance between a right brain, left brain type of job. So on one hand, some days you're an artist, so I work a lot with a lot of designers. On the other day, you're like a scientist, and I work very analytically, doing pricing, managing different aspects of store relations and a bunch of other factors. So it's a never boring job for sure.
Was that always something you were interested in, kind of combining this more like creative aspect with a business mindset, or is that something you just fell into a little bit by necessity?
That's actually a good question. I never really thought about it. I guess so. I mean, I'm a very deep believer in psychology. So if I start beginning to think about kind of upbringing wise, my mother is incredibly creative, and my father is very he's very strict. He's German. He's on time. He'll always tell me, Chris, if you're early, you're never late. So this balancing aspect, I think it found its way into myself, and even from my sister as well. And I guess you start mixing that upbringing, and then the other fact of it was, I grew up in Pittsburgh, really, about 5 minutes outside of the city, in a place called Dormont. And where I'm from, fashion was really important. It wasn't the fashion that other people had. If you're from Western PA, you get it. But if you're from some other places, dressing in a little bit more of a hip hop type of clothes and being influenced by certain music and everything else was a little bit different for people. So sneakers were a huge element to my upbringing. So that was kind of a foot in for fashion. And when I realized that you had the ability to kind of intertwine that with not only just pretty much your outside the classroom thought process, like almost just no cuff, like your street smarts, and mixing it with your college education, it was a great combo for me because I think, like most people, graduating was something important to me. So I really did want to be able to use my degree for something, and this allowed me to kind of play it both ways.
And I think you touched on something interesting, which is that when you go into the professional world, yes, you have all the lessons you learned in the classroom, but you also have to bring with you like who you are and all of the influences and knowledge that you gain throughout your life, not in the classroom.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a huge influence for everyone, in that we don't think about it, and they don't talk about it in class that much. They'll teach you the textbook, but they won't kind of explore as much who you are and what you bring individually to the job.
Yeah, I mean, because sometimes, I mean, obviously, shooting for a 4.0 in college is the idea. I mean, you definitely want to graduate higher in that way. At the same time, um, you can learn a heck of a lot from some of the intangible experiences that you have. So for Cal specifically, I would say equally as important as the classroom was I lived in Jefferson, which then became Vulcan Village, which I think has changed names again. But the point was, it was, the experiences that I had in that place with the roommates that I had and the people interaction really sets you up for a while. And I don't know if you ever read the book like The Art of War, but it's a incredible book. And Shenzhen, a Chinese general. This is almost older than the Bible, I believe. But there's some key elements to really read upon. And one of the biggest factors is when he would actually have some soldiers, he'd pin them up almost behind a mountain in a way. So you really had no other. You had nothing else. You had to, almost not to be graphic, but fight to the death. When your back is against the wall in any situation, they say that people become transcendent. So pretty much, when your back is against the wall, you really do become the best part of yourself. So by throwing yourself in the ring in that way and going and just being on your own and figuring it out is such, I mean, that's half the battle right there. So it was something really valuable in my upbringing, I would say.
So, I mean, you're in Italy now and you stopped in New York and then you were in Cal. So, can you kind of take me through and give me like a timeline or break into chapters, your whole journey professionally, personally? Um,
Sure, sure. Well, I graduated from Cal. It was like December of '07, so right into 2008. So, people that are unfortunately going through some of the issues that the pandemic has caused. I mean, we definitely feel your pain in the way of job searching. That was definitely very challenging. So when I graduated, you graduate with this concept of a business degree or marketing degree, and so often, I mean, that's a very broad situation. That's like saying I want to drive. Okay, well, I mean, there's a million roads out there. So so it really helps narrowing it down by finding, to me it was finding, asking yourself, what would you do for free? Okay, so what would you, I mean, to this day, don't tell my employer, but I do this job for free. I
Mhm.
love it. So, and not everybody can find that, but at least if you can find an avenue. I definitely didn't love every job I had to get to this point. That's for darn sure. But when I first graduated from college, I took a job that was in computer sales. Again, just trying to find work. I was also valet parking at that time as well, and I was there for a few months, and I just realized that this just wasn't for me. And that's whenever the epiphany kind of hit, where it was almost as if, look, I don't care if I'm broke the rest of my life. I'm gonna find something that you love. The trick about everything, then I can tell you, not to foreshadow ahead, but the one trick I can tell you is that if you quit thinking about the money for 2 minutes, forget the money. Anybody who's great at what they do gets really well paid. Okay. So it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Pick the thing that really moves you, and it will be a natural, organic process that will get you to that situation. Because there's so many days where you don't love, so you have to really find the avenue you're going that you really enjoy, and you have to pursue that to the fullest. So pretty much started computer sales for 6 months, hated it in a way. After that, I began opening boxes at a store in Ross Park Mall. So this was post having a college degree,
Mm.
and I opened boxes on like Sundays for minimum wage. It was only like one day a week, and they wouldn't give me any more days. But I mean, when you say like started from the bottom, this is started from the bottom. But it was fantastic. I loved it, and it was just trying to feel fabric, trying to understand materials a lot better. And after that, I kind of like bounced around from there to being a sales associate to doing a couple things. My goal was really to try to become an assistant buyer at American Eagle, and because American Eagle was obviously based in Pittsburgh, and it was fashion. I mean, it wasn't my type of fashion necessarily, but it was definitely an avenue. And I tried my hardest. So for like 2 years, I did everything. The store that I was working for actually was in conjunction with American Eagle, and one of the reasons I took that opening position was because there was many employees that would be working at the corporate office that would come there and spend like an employee discount at this place. And everybody that would come in, I would always grab their business cards and everything else. I was always trying to market and always trying to just push myself to try to help any way possible. One key thing I always think about is this movie, The Usual Suspects. And they're discussing this fictional guy. His name is Kaiser Sosa, and he and Kevin Spacey. I don't want to give away the ending, but Kevin Spacey speaking about this individual, and he's saying what he realized was that you didn't need numbers or guns or strength or all these different things. You didn't need anything like that. You just needed to be willing to do what the next person wasn't willing to do. Now, I would have never, lie, cheat, or steal type of situation, but anything between the lines, you have to be willing to do, So one thing for me was definitely collecting his business cards. I would end up calling the headquarters every day, trying to get in touch with the human resource team. It might not be for everybody, but at that point, I was kind of like, I had nothing to lose. So eventually they let me go through. I spoke to the right people, and was able to get some interviews. But they called me after the interview and told me, Chris, sorry, you still didn't get this job. This was after 2 years. So I told American Eagle, I appreciate your time, but this is the last day I'm gonna work for you. So I left. I started managing a men's store in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh. I worked for a guy who was a merchant first. He was just an incredible guy. Sometimes when you work for a sole proprietor, it can be a little challenging for hours and some other things, but you learn from the bottom up. And learning from the bottom up is such a key factor to everything. And also like human interaction, like the concept of like the one-on-one with people, you really understand them from a deeper level. So even for what I do today, you have to eat where people eat. You have to smell what they're smelling. You have to put yourself inside of their shoes in every way possible. It has deep psychology to it. But one of the easier ways for me was because I worked in a store and was able to do that. After that, I started calling a retailer that's a luxury retailer called Neiman Marcus. And Neiman Marcus is based in Dallas, Texas. I'd never been to Dallas, Texas. I'd never been inside of Neiman Marcus. Okay, but they sold some of the higher end products that I was selling actually at the store in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh. So again, like American Eagle, I called for, I think it was like, actually, this one was worse. I called for like 45 days straight, right? So calling every single day, changing up the times of the day, changing up my voice, trying to understand how to get to the human resource team. Eventually, this woman who I later became very close friends with, she was like, Chris, I don't even care anymore. She's like, just talk to her. Okay. And it was the woman who was overseeing all of the hiring. And it turned out that we had a lot in common. And she basically said, Chris, I will fly you down to Dallas. Come and interview. What she didn't tell me until later was that they had been on a hiring freeze for 3 years almost. So they claimed about like almost like 10,000 applicants. And they narrowed this down to 300 people. So it was 100 people sessions to get about 39 jobs. And by the grace of God, I don't know, I was fortunate, but like some kid from Pittsburgh, from Cal U, they wanted to take a shot on. So I ended up going into that, what is it called? It was a development program. So basically it was 3 months training on how to become a merchant or a buyer. Okay. So it was a lot of analytical work, and then you obviously had to have a fashion background. So it was again, this is really kind of where this right brain, left brain started. And I worked there for about 2.5 years, loved it, but needed a new opportunity. Moved to New York City. I began working for Jimmy Choo, and some people are familiar, some people aren't, but it's definitely it's a strong name in women's. They were starting out in men's, so they pretty much made the position for me. So I took it, obviously. And I went to New York City. I called my friend on the way there. I said, look, I got nowhere to stay. And if you, I mean, I think what's amazing is you've lived in New York, so you know how it works trying to get an apartment there. So at this point, my friend was so sweet. She's like, oh yeah, come and stay with me and everything else. So I was like, okay, I'm glad, because other than that, I think I was going to have to sleep in a hotel room. So I stayed with her for a little bit, found a place. I transitioned about a year after to being a buyer for a place called Bergdorf Goodman. Bergdorf Goodman is probably top
Oh
five,
yeah.
top 10 in the, in the world as far as luxury retailing. Um, so at this job, not only was I buying products from everybody from like the Saint Laurents, Givenchy's, the Ferragamos, Gucci's, everybody, but also I did a lot of product development as well. So I would go to Italy 6 times a year. I would go to Paris probably about 4 times a year. And when I would be in Italy, a lot of times I would find myself in certain regions that people really have never heard of, and I probably won't even say on the camera. But they're the best kept secret places for footwear like manufacturing. So I would go there and begin to work in these factories and actually begin to design product, and then we would end up buying the product and then selling it. So it was complete 360. And it was a great job. And I don't know if it was because of that or whatnot, but I got noticed by Ferragamo, and they asked me kind of something crazy, and they said, would you like to move from New York to Florence, Italy? At this point, I have to tell you, even though I moved to Italy, I did not know a single Italian word. My grandmother, she was Italian, and my grandparents were Italian, but they did not speak Italian whatsoever.
Mhm.
So I came here with my wife. We knew not a single person, and we couldn't speak one word. And I went from buying for a single store in New York City to all of a sudden being responsible for so much product globally around the world. So it was a huge jump, and something that I've been very appreciative of. And I'm still here, and through the pandemic, through everything. So we're still out here fighting. I'm talking to
And
you
I'm
today.
I'm getting the sense listening to your story that if there was a word to define, it'd be relentless. Um, and how much did that relentlessness figure into your decision to be willing to relocate? Because I think some people in this area are hesitant to leave Western Pennsylvania. I mean, it's a great area. It has all four seasons. It has everything you could ever want. And so there's a hesitancy to leave. But I mean, you have obviously traveled and relocated a lot for work, and I did too. I grew up in this area, and then I lived in New York City throughout all my 20s. What was your thought process about making that decision to be willing to kind of live wherever the job was?
Yeah, I mean, I feel in my life, maybe I don't know, fortunate or whatnot, but I've never really been afraid to take the shot. So I'm a big sports fan and whatnot. There's a lot of people in the world who there's people out there that not only do they do not want to pass the ball, they want to take that shot, they want to take that risk.
Mhm.
And I feel like I've always had that inside of me as that type of person. You need a little bit of confidence and courage in yourself, but truthfully, it's it breaks down to two things. One is steps, and the other is windows. Okay. So if you think about it from like a steps standpoint, I would never have been ready to move to Italy if I didn't already move to Dallas once. And then after that, moving to New York City. And truth be told, I would never want this to, for somebody to not, or to, be thrown off by this, but moving to New York might have been harder than moving to Italy in a way. Moving to New York really tests you. I don't have to tell you, it tests you. It's one thing to take pics in Times Square. It's another thing to meet me at like Tuesday somewhere out in Brooklyn, in February when it's freezing out and you're fighting people for trains. So it's a different lifestyle, but you have to be willing to take that risk. So when I say that the steps was really helpful, I couldn't have went to Italy first. I had to try one other thing, and it's the same confidence level that you gain with anything. So the first time somebody got behind the wheel of a car, I mean, think about it. You were probably very nervous,
Mhm.
and then all of a sudden you drove on the street, and you were like, "Wow, okay, that was amazing!" Right now, all of a sudden you went to a street where you had to merge and you had to get on the street, and it went from 25 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. Now you're driving on a 35 mile per hour road, and it's the first time ever, and you're just like, wow, right? Then all of a sudden your instructor might say, okay, like turn onto this highway. Now you're on the highway, and now you're driving 60. See, like, but you weren't ready to just get on the highway. You needed to make sure first that you went on the side street, then you went on a little bit faster street, then you're ready for the highway. So, it doesn't just blink. And I think one thing that I really dislike sometimes about social media or these like fake lifestyles in a way is that people just see like kind of the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. They have no idea what that person had to do to get to that point. And everybody just idolizes the end result. But the reality is that it takes it takes all that trying and failing and picking yourself back up each time. But that was steps wise, windows wise. This isn't to scare anybody, but like we're not going to be here forever. So the reality is that your window, and that is when you graduate from college until you feel it's an appropriate amount of time, potentially, I don't know, whatever you want to do, but the marriage, children aspect of life, okay, these things come in. And it's not for everybody, but let's say it is still a high majority. So, your window before all of that is small. So what are you going to do with your moment? What are you going to do? You have to ask yourself that. So if the chance is out there, you have to be willing to take it. The one thing that, I mean, nobody loves Pittsburgh more than I do. Like, I bleed black and gold. That picture above me right here is a picture of the bird. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like that's gone anywhere. I mean, it's still there. And I have incredibly strong family base, but at the same moment, you have to be able to throw yourself in that water. You got to be able to know if you can swim, and once you do it, I'm gonna tell you, it becomes contagious. You can't, you just feel as if you really can accomplish a lot, but you're not just doing it because you have this bold confidence. You're doing it because it's a trained confidence from being successful when you've tried something like that before.
Yeah, and I think in like psychology, they would consider that. They always say for like for social development theory, it's trying to aim for something just beyond what you can do on your own immediately. So like your initial range of ability is things you can just do by yourself, and you don't need any guidance or help. You just know how to do it. And then that next sphere where the most development happens is where it's a little bit beyond what you can do on your own or without direction. And that's where you really grow. And that's where, if you want to live there, because it's not so far out that you're going to fail, but it's not so close that you don't need to challenge yourself. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about here, is that like putting yourself in that place where you have to push yourself and put yourself out there.
I mean, think about this. It's just like I make a phone call, right? And I say, my name's Chris Buffington. I'd love to talk to blah blah blah. They say, no, you can't. They hang up on me. It doesn't matter. It literally, it wasn't a punch in the face. It wasn't something physical. It's okay. My phone's still here. It still works the same thing that they told me no. Sometimes people are so nervous about like the rejection aspect of things, but it's part of life. I mean, everybody gets rejected. You always hear these like, aspects of like these famous basketball players that take all these shots and miss them, but uh, go out and take the shot. I mean, so what if someone tells you no? I think in general, people need a level of challenge, right? So
Mhm.
you really that can really bring out another side of people that is an amazing factor, because when you are no longer scared, you're dangerous in a good way. You because literally that scared aspect of things really holds people back. They're so nervous, like, oh, if I leave, there's this or there's that or there's all these things. And I'm a football fan and I love Pittsburgh and everything else, but I love this one quote Mike Tomlin he'll say like, those sound like excuses, and on this team we don't make them. And so every time you're about to tell yourself like something, oh well, not the right day, or I don't know about this, pick yourself up and test yourself. Go ahead, throw yourself in. You'll swim. You will. You're not going to drown. And then the best part is like what happens, like even when, for instance, when I moved to Dallas, what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, we're all in, but at the end, I can always come back to my mom and dad's house. Maybe it's not the most ideal situation, but I can visit an aunt, I can visit a family member, and they're still a base for most people. So don't think that goes anywhere.
And you can kind of see the light in somebody's eyes when they figure that out, when they crack that code, and they're like, oh, I can determine all of this. In the movies, it's where the hero picks themselves up off the ground. and you're like, oh, the bad guy's in trouble because it's over the second they stood back up.
And everybody's
Um,
got that in them. Everybody's got it in them. It's just harder to find in some and easier to find in others, but everybody has it inside of them.
Right. And I think it all starts with, and we started our conversation with this was, find the thing that you would do for free. Cause that's what that you're not like, if you hate your career, you're going to stay on that ground and ask somebody else to do the job. You know what I mean? But if you really love the job, that's what's going to make you stand up during the hard times and, find the solution to the problem, or find the contact to the person you need to talk to who has the job that you want. Whatever it is, you'll find the answer if it means enough to you. um,
Absolutely.
and I think that's where it all starts with, is helping students kind of identify what's that thing that lights that fire, because you do, like you said, you have that fire in you. Everybody has it. If you're going down a path where you don't feel that, it's a moment to kind of reflect and see what would make me get up.
And the thing is that like if there's students listening to us right now and everything else, like the expectation isn't that you just have it all figured out. It's not that. It's just more like chipping away at things until you're finding that thing that you really love. um, is one. I know I can't speak for everybody. I only can speak for myself. But one of the biggest thing was during those moments of like working in computer sales of some level, you have to actually go backward, not go forward. So go backward. See, like when I said, do something that you would do for free, the only time that you were in a position like that in your life was when you were younger, right? So when you were younger, there was something about something that just moved you. It could have been, I don't know, it could have been movies, but it doesn't mean you have to be a movie star. For me, it was shoes, but I mean, okay, design a little bit, but it's not like I have your own brand at the moment or anything like that. You can be a part of a lot of things, and still feel that gratification, and it could be something that could be amazing, and you become a great teammate because that is a contagious behavior, like really feeling a deep sensation of what you love in the middle of it. But like there's a Jay-Z line where he'll say, you can try to change, but it's just the top layer. And I always believe that is like, in reality, I feel I'm 36, even at 36, I feel, I know my 14-year-old self. I think we all kind of have, and especially as a student, I mean, we're talking about the difference of being 13, 14 years old versus when they graduate at 22. You remember how it was 8 years ago, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot of things changed in those 8 years. You gained a lot of knowledge, you were exposed to a lot more things. But the fact of the matter is that there was things that got you up in the morning and you did that had nothing to ever do with money. It was just about what you wanted to do. And if you can try to harness that in and find whatever that is, you can probably have a really successful career at it, in some level. So that would be my advice, I would say.
That's so great. So before we wrap up, I want to go into our rapid fire round, and it's the big three. It's just three questions, and you can answer in 3 sentences or less. So the first one is, what's the worst part of your job?
Oh man, I gotta be careful on this one. Give me a second. I'd probably say probably the commute.
Okay.
So in Italy, you have to have an Italian license, which I haven't gotten yet. So taking a few buses, on a daily basis sometimes isn't the most ideal, but um, I'd probably say it's a little rough in the morning sometimes.
That is a completely fair one that some people should probably consider. It's because you spend a lot of time commuting to work every day.
Every day.
And then the second one is, what do you know now that you wish you'd known then? And you can interpret that however you want.
I wish I knew like the connects that I know now. I
Okay.
mean, because okay, I didn't know anybody. So all of these things I'm talking about would have been a heck of a lot easier if I had somebody to actually call and they knew who I was and they were willing to answer. That would be a huge element of things, is bringing the connects with you, because once you have those, nowadays I try to mentor a lot of younger people, and they will always ask me like, hey, can you call somebody here, can you do something here? And I'm fortunate enough in order to have some decent number of people I know, but at the time I knew nobody. So I wish so bad that I had the connects, I'd say.
But also part of that too, though, is that journey to, because I worked in entertainment for 10 years, the journey to building that like roster of connections, your contact list or whatever, that's part of your education in a way, in your role is finding those connections and building those contacts and making a human connection. If you gave me the contact info for somebody that I needed and I reached out to them, they might answer, they might be doing you a favor by getting back to me and helping me out. If I had made that connection on my own in some kind of happenstantial way, that they're way more likely to help me out. And so I think the more you can make those connections yourself, as opposed to, like a referral or something, is always preferred, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, I think I think some of it is, um, I know for a fact that a variety of the jobs that I had post Neiman Marcus was heavily influenced by one man who I worked for,
Mhm.
because his reputation was solid as well. So I think that you making it on your own. That's probably one of the things I'm very proud of. Definitely is like being pretty self-made. At the same time, there's a lot of people that that help you out along the way. I mean, you can't forget anybody.
That's true. That's true. I mean, they always say it takes a village. And then my last question, and we've kind of talked about this a lot already, but maybe you can summarize it in like a sentence or two, is what is your definition of success?
I would say that the definition of success is being able to control your own destiny. Um, that to me is incredibly important. I think success varies I mean, it varies by person. I mean, it definitely, if I asked my mom, she would give you a different definition. If I asked my wife, if I asked my dad, it would always be a different definition. For me, it's definitely being able to control your own destiny. So that's kind of like the goal, and it's something you're always continually chasing, I should say. But it's that to me is probably the most important thing, the thing that you wake up every day you're trying to chase.
Amazing. I agree with everything. Well, I could talk to you for a long time, but like I said, we're on a time limit. So I will let you get out of here. I really appreciate the time so much. Especially from so far away. I can't wait for the students to listen to this. And you're just, I think you're a philosopher in many ways. And I appreciated all the influences that you dropped, from Jay-Z to the Art of War.
Thank you very much, Alex. Yeah, we have a very diverse background.
Yep.
Sorry, it's a mixture of a lot of things inside of it for sure. So now I appreciate the time very much, and I'll just finish by saying that Cal is a huge element of my life, and I'm very proud of it. So anywhere I go and what I do, I always make sure I say California University of Pennsylvania. And some places they've heard, some places they haven't, but
Mhm.
you try to represent as best as possible, and it definitely gave me a major stepping stool, and I would never take any of it back. And one of the biggest factors is a place where I met my wife as well, so it's very a very connected area for us.